Bonjour à toutes et tous, vous écoutez First Print, votre podcast comics préféré pour une nouvelle émission de notre format SuperFriends dans lequel nous allons à la rencontre des personnes qui font vivre la pop culture et la culture comics par leur travail. Et aujourd'hui, je crois bien que c'est la 3e ou 4e fois que nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir James Tynion IV dans notre podcast. L'auteur est de retour en France, il aime notre pays. Il est de retour pour le démarrage de sa nouvelle série Exquisite Corpses qui sort en VF chez Urban Comics. Et on a tout un tas de choses à lui poser comme question autour de cette série qu'il a co-créée avec Michael Walsh, qui hélas ne pourra pas être présent dans ce podcast, et aussi pas mal de choses à interroger sur le Tiny Onion qui est en train de devenir un monstre dans l'industrie du divertissement. Donc le générique se lance et on va passer à l'interview en anglais avec James. So it's really nice to have you back and back. In our podcast. I think it's the third or fourth time that we have these discussions together. So it's really great to just pile up the interviews so we can just get on more and more topics together.
Absolutely.
So last time we spoke about horror, we spoke about Nice House by the Sea and Watery. Today we're going to speak about Exquisite Corpses because it's your whole new series here in France. And I just wanted to know first, because it's a story set in the genre of a battle royale.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of this genre?
Oh yeah, and I mean, very specifically, battle royale. The
original.
The original. That came out. When would that have come out? That would have come out around 90, either somewhere between 99 and 2003, like right in that range. So it was something that when I first heard about battle royale, it was one of those things where they were having trouble importing it into the US. So it was something that had a big, it had a big mystique that was, me and my friends very, very badly. We heard about it for a year or so before we were actually able to see it. And then it's like, I love the movie. It is also, it's not a perfect movie, but it is a movie that it's just like it captures this like really, really brutal energy. And I don't know, there is something to that sort of, like all out war concept that of putting a bunch of fascinating characters against each other is it leads to really, really good stories. So yeah, I've been wanting to tell a story of my own in that format for quite some time, and with the start of Tiny Onion and beyond that, like it was, the partnership with Michael Walsh, it was just like this was the perfect moment to bring this story to life.
Did you read or watch other stories in this genre? Like I'm thinking more like Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've read all of the Hunger Game novels, and then and then watched the movies. There were many types of stories that I think that there are many different influences to what we were doing here. Back when we were laying out the influences to the team of creators that we worked with on the book, there, like, obviously Hunger Games would be on the list, obviously Battle Royale, but also The Purge, also even both of the Suicide Squad movies. The idea of all of these like clashing figures having to go head to head. But I wanted the story to really stand on its own and be more than just its influences. And I'm extraordinarily proud of what we were able to put together.
Do you know why we are fascinated by these stories of just people clashing together and killing each other? And I was wondering, do you think that the Roman games are the first kind of battle royale.
I mean, I absolutely think that there's something gladiatorial about all of this. There's, we do like our blood sports. We like boxing. We like, they're like wrestling and all of this stuff. There's an energy. There's to those sorts of events that it's just like, you want to have, like, you pick your person and you want that person to win. But I think even beyond that, it's like we're living in this moment of, like, the peak video games where it is also, it's like you literally choose which character you want to play and then you fight to the death in some sort of arena. It's something that I think has become really kind of second nature to how we think about like genre storytelling. And then, beyond that, it's like I did 10 years working in superhero comics, and there is something, even though it's not a fight to the death, it is it is gladiatorial combat. It is, like colorful characters being pitted against each other to see who will win. And so there's, at least over in the American market, there's a tremendous audience for brightly colored characters fighting each other. But then elevating, or maybe not elevating, but, dialing up some of the knobs and, lend the intensity to put all of these, to really have them fight to the death is like creates a really special dynamic. And it's, I think that's a huge part of why the series has found the success it has over in the US.
And it will surely find a success in France. We hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship to Michael Walsh? How did you guys meet, and how did the project form with both of you together?
Yeah, so Michael and I have known each other from the start of our careers. We're both kind of like in our early 20s. We were both kind of the kids in the comics industry. Like we were, like most of our peers were about 10 years older than us, and so we would gravitate to each other when we'd be at a convention, hanging out at a bar or what have you. And that was, like we always had a really, really easy rapport. But we hadn't had a chance to work together until he has an anthology series he does called The Silver Coin that he invited me to do an issue of. And the two of us had so much fun working on that together. That it really it planted the seed that was like, oh no, I want to build something more substantial with Michael. And Silver Coin is the other, was also part of the reason that I wanted to reach out to him with the kernel of the idea of Exquisite Corpses, because it's a very experimental book. The basic concept of Silver Coin is, Michael is both a writer and an artist, but rather than do the typical horror anthology that's many artists, many writers, he stayed as the artist for the entire run of that series, but then went to many different writers to write different horror stories based on his core concept. And that created a really, really fun dynamic. And it showed that he also enjoys playing with the medium, with the form, and that kind of play was, I think, was part of what I wanted to get at with Exquisite Corpses. The initial idea that I had was basically, I wrote up on a board, like serial killer fight 'em up. Like that was really it's like serial killers fight to the death was the kind of initial concept. And I knew that it would had this element of these wealthy families pitting these killers together. And then it would be a bunch of civilians caught in the crossfire of this big battle royale. But, I also knew that I wanted to bring in a larger crew of creators to help me build this story. And, I wanted to I wanted someone who like saw the fun in that, where it would be like, okay, you and I are going to design 12 killers. We're going to design this world and set all of the rules of it. And then we're going to get a writer's room together and basically ask that writer's room what happens next. And then play off of each other and the energy of the room and try to capture that and do something that is more than what the two of us could have just created on our own. And, I think a lot of creators would have been like, no, let's just do the version that's the two of us and all of that. But Michael got so excited about that concept and the scale of what we would be able to build in that format. And, and that literally from that first conversation, he started sending me designs of killers. And some of those designs made it all the way to the final. One of the first designs he did is the Fox Mask Killer, who is the character on the, cover of the box set over here. And, the cover of the first volume back in the US. And it's those like Michael loves playing with character design and all of that. So it was tremendously fun building all of these characters and this whole world with him.
How did you build them? Did you just let Michael do the designs based on like informations you would give on the character, or did you also have a say in what they should look like?
I mean, it was very much a back and forth, but a lot of times with these characters, it's been like there were a few characters where I was like, we need a character who kind of serves this function. But then there were other characters that were entirely designed, like that were just like, he was just throwing together some doodles and was like, here, what if a killer looked like this? And then which would then prompt me to come up with like, what is the backstory and all of that. And then, with him, me, and the Tiny Onion team, then it would just be all of us tossing ideas back and forth. But I think, a lot of, I've always been very focused in my comics of like, what is the key visual image of each series? I think in Something's Killing the Children, it's the character of Erica Slaughter and the mask. And I didn't come up with the mask. That was all Werther, but it was, ever since Werther created the iconic image of Erica Slaughter, it's really reminded me that it's just, I work in a visual medium, and it's just like each character in these series, like there needs to be a character that pops, that feels like a comic book character, and the reason that this is a comic book. And we did the same thing over in World Tree with the character of Fear, and building that character with Fernando. It's just like, this is an iconic figure that it's just like is larger than life, is more than just a singular figure. And so that is, that was the ethos we wanted to bring into all of this. So, he would design a character and then I'd be throwing ideas back and forth. It was like, okay, how do we pop these elements? How do we dial the character up? Because I didn't want any of the character, because there was a version of this that we could have just like, everyone could have felt like a 1980s like slasher style character. It would have felt very like nostalgia heavy and all of that. And we didn't want that. We also didn't want everyone to just feel like, too goofy and modern. I think you can see a bit of a Fortnite influence just in terms of the like how eclectic all of the characters are. But we also didn't want to lean too far in that direction where everything is so over the top that it's just like there's no like nothing grounding there. So it's just like we had a kind of rule that it's like, okay, we have to have like, a set of characters that feel like one step removed from superhero comics. And we have to have a set of characters that feel like they've fallen right out of a horror movie. And then there have to be a few characters that then push things like into a kind of, silly, ridiculous realm. But then we have to like earn that and make it scary. And so it's just like we were pushing back and forth and all of that. And then trying to figure out like how to make each one visually pop on their own. And it's tremendously fun.
Because I was wondering also if maybe the weapons had an impact on the design. I was wondering if you were choosing from like appearance and characteristics, or maybe the the start was like, okay, so we have this weapon. Who could make the best of that kind of weapon?
So it was about 50-50, where it was just, there were a handful of killer designs that were laid down before I had laid out the rules of, okay, there are these 12 types of weapons. But then when we were finishing out the roster, it was like, okay, here are the 12 types of weapons. These 3 designs that you were doing, like just throwing ideas out there, fit perfectly into these 3. And then we were able to just check those off. But then it was just like, okay, who is the bomb character? Who is the fire character? And it was just like that, that element became, like, it did become very key in shaping all of the characters. And, as we wrap up season 1 right now, over in the US, we're starting our conversations about the second season. So now we're back at it, where we're laying out like, okay, here are all of the weapons. Here's like who would fit each type of weapon. So we're digging back in, and it is a very, very fun process to come up with some very larger than life characters.
I'll let you have it. Please do.
All right.
And I was also wondering if when you created the characters, if you already knew who was going to win the game or who was going to die first.
Very specifically, we didn't want to know. So what Michael and I laid out is, it's like, because we were working with this larger group of creators, we wrote a Bible for the world that was like, here are all of the killers, here's their core personality, here's their weapon, here's what their general gist is. We laid out each of the civilians, we laid out the town of Oak Valley, we laid out all of the 13 families and all of those dynamics. And then I wrote the 60-page first script for the series, which is, it's the oversized pilot for this entire world. And so we did all of that ourselves. And it wasn't until but then we got in the room and we were like, okay, what happens next? So we did make the decision of which character died in the first issue. But aside from that, we really had no idea who would make it all the way to the end. There were a couple of characters that we were like, okay, like if somebody makes a really strong case, we'll consider killing them early on. But it's just like, we see these as characters who are going to last further into the conflict. And, but aside from that, we didn't do much to like put our thumb on the scale to sort of force the story to go one way or another. We wanted to be surprised, and there were characters that we thought would be kind of goofy one-offs that ended up being some of the like final characters standing at the end of the tournament. And so that was really exciting. And there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong building a story that way. And I still find it remarkable that it has come together in the way that it has.
So in a more technical way, how did you do the whole issues? Because every issue you are on the script with another writer, and
Yep.
Michael is on the art with another artist. And I was just really wondering, so what did you do on each issue?
So
what did the other teams do?
So essentially, first off, we got the entire team together in a room for half of a week in Buffalo, New York. And we broke the entire story for the entire season in a room together. So it's like everything went up on the board. Like writers would pitch out like what they thought would happen in their episode, and then I was the one sort of putting things up on cards up on the board, laying each step out. And then once we laid it all out, we didn't want it to just be like a pass the baton. We edited the story to make sure that it's like, okay, we're missing a character beat right here. We're missing, like, we haven't seen this character for 2 issues. So what are they up to? How do they fit into all of this? But we laid out all 13 issues, 7 here in France. But it's like we laid that whole piece out. And we plotted the story from beginning to end in the room together. So we had a very direct hand in every single piece of the puzzle. And then one of the secondary writers in all of this is Michael Walsh, who is also the writer of the series. So he and I were working very closely on his issues to make sure that they helped further the story along and all of that. And then issue to issue back in the US, Michael and I did an opening and closing sequence to every single issue that continued the story of the 13 families. So that was the thing that, like, Michael drew every issue. I wrote every line of dialogue in every issue. But then the other writers and artists were doing everything in the middle. But at the same time, like, I was going in, like, Michael was going in over every, layout of art that was coming in issue by issue to make sure that it was following the rules that we had sort of laid out about the visual language of the series. And then I was going through making sure that the dialogue was consistent throughout so that every character seemed like they were the same character. Because it was something that we made it, like, we wanted this to function more like a TV show. It's not like, when you come in and do your issue, this is your, like, everyone knows that it's your issue. Yeah. We don't want people to really be able to tell who wrote which issue. We want it to read like a consistent storyline, like they're just writing an episode in a season of television.
So it's not exactly an exquisite corpse per se. In that kind of, because I was almost wondering if the artists, the guest artists, just did like the layouts and the pacing, and then Michael would draw over, because it just seems really like very consistent. There's no very graphics breaks between issues.
And I think a huge unifier in that way was Jordi Belair as our colorist, who is coloring every page of every single issue for the entire series, so that she was able to kind of help create that through line. But we were, it was a very complicated machine. We have, at Tiny Onion, we have 3 editors, and, normally it's only 1 or 2 of them on a book, but we had all 3 of them working on this one because, especially when you have artists drawing simultaneously, there would be, like, if someone starts drawing a sequence in a parking lot that then shows up in the next issue, and they're drawing that simultaneously, like, Michael would have to go draw, this is what the parking lot looks like. This is a kind of map of it all, so that then it's consistent in each piece. There's like a level of complexity that is much more, more intense than when it's just a couple of people working together.
I can't imagine the email exchanges or the WhatsApp group you have, because there should be like a lot of back and forth and and discussions. How do you make it stick together?
I mean,
after the whole seminar you got for a week.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it is thanks to our editorial team led by Eric Harburn. He's the editor who helped me build Something is Killing the Children. And, and then working with him are, Steve Fox, who's edited, Department of Truth, World Tree, like most of my horror books released in the US through Image. And then Greg Lockard, who, his career started at Vertigo back in the old days at DC. And so it's just like we had this, like, a lot of very, very strong editorial talent who I need to, like, keep me consistent, because sometimes, like, I'm writing so many different things. Sometimes I'll, like, especially when I'm introducing like secondary and tertiary characters, they always have to catch me because it's like I will forget the name. It's like I've introduced a sheriff, and then it's like I refer to him by one name, and then an issue later I refer to them by another name, and they're like, James, you established his name. Like, you need editors. They're very, very helpful. But then on top of that, it was just like, it was this really, really tight creative energy between all of us. And it's just like, Michael and I have been in like constant contact since the start of this series. And then Jordy, we all like, Michael and I have all similarly was, one of the comics kids who broke into the industry really early, but we're all roughly the same age. And like, we've all been friends for over a decade, and it's just like, we are just constantly bouncing back and forth. And then, everyone on the Corpse crew has just become really, really like close together. And we've been, over the release of the series, we've been doing, a signing tour that, we've hit multiple cities, and whenever possible, we bring members of the team together. So we've had lots of excuses to come together as a group over the course of that whole series, which has really furthered the camaraderie between all of the creators. And I also think it like helped the cohesion of the story itself.
And you've got one more thing in common. You're thirsty for blood.
Yes, exactly.
And I was wondering, how did you decide because one of the interesting stuff in the battle royale is also the death, the killing, and some of them are really graphic.
Yes.
So how did you choose also how to have fun with all these bloodthirsty killing scenes?
I mean, I think that the part of that was just choosing the right people to be involved in this. And then it's like, Michael and I enjoy horror. And we want to have fun. We wanted this to be a fun series to read and to work on. And that does mean that each death has to be a moment. And, some of those moments like are more, extreme than others. And it's like but that was like, it's the thing that I think it was what worked the best about the writer's room, because there became a little bit of like one-upmanship between all of the different writers in the room, where they would just start describing what could happen in a moment, and then someone would like jump in and dial it up to the next degree. Some of the most brutal concepts in the entire thing come from Jordy Belair, who there's a sequence I won't spoil that I believe will be in the second issue released here in France, that is a really, really messed up scene in a hospital. That there's a moment leading up to it that the writer of that issue, Pornsack Pichechot, was like pitching out to the room, and then Jordy says, and then they walk into the next room, and she described what you saw there, and everyone in the room was like, we can't do that, and then Jordy's like, we have to do it. And it was just like, that was the energy, and it made for a one of the best creative experiences, like collaborative creative experiences of my life.
There's even some kind of dark humor during the issues, especially with the kid character, which is a very funny one. And I was also wondering if because you're trying to keep the whole thing a little bit grounded, but still you're trying also to get some humor, because you have to, because otherwise maybe it would be just too dark. Too dark. How did you manage with the whole team the balance between humor and like really pure horror?
So I think the big thing was with, when we were laying out the rules of storytelling here, one thing that I was very, very firm about is that the point of view characters through the entire storyline in Oak Valley had to be the civilians. As interesting and as colorful as all of the killer characters are, like, they are the larger than life thing that is coming into this town, But the point of the story is not digging into their backstories and like revealing their secret emotions and all of that. They're weapons that are being inflicted onto this town. And the thing that would make it a horror story is by living in the emotions of the characters who are caught in the crossfire of this battle. Just ordinary people living in our ordinary life. And so as long as those moments, the moments with the civilians, came from grounded human emotions that felt real, then you have a little more liberty when dealing with the killers to let them be larger than life, to let them feel a little less grounded, because it's like, it's basically, characters from an over the top, like superhero adjacent thing falling into, just a ordinary small town in America. And it's just like that. We wanted that clash.
From Hunger Games to the original Battle Royale, there's always a politic component to the Battle Royale stories. And it is also present in Exquisite Corpses. Do you think that you can't do a Battle Royale story without some very politic elements?
I think so. I think there are different ways that you could approach it, but I think that ultimately, when you're dealing with something this brutal, and this type, like a fight to the death, is a truly brutal, horrible thing. And when you are, especially when you're setting it in the contemporary world, it's just the idea of like, who would be callous enough to put those characters against each other, and also not to care about who gets caught in between it all. And so the story from its very inception had that element of, it's just like, this is a game that wealthy families play, and they do not care about who gets caught up in that game, because they don't value the lives of the people in these small towns. And I think that, it is, just a kind of fact of the world that we all know, is that there are people who operate outside of consequence, and, it is, and who do not care about the welfare of just the average person. And so, like, dialing that up to 11 and, making it this colorful battle royale, like, it allows us to, say something that I think feels very true about this moment, and play with, that we're living through a very dark political moment, specifically in America, but globally, where a lot of our worst impulses are coming to the surface. And and then more and more horrible things come to light every single day about, the ruling class of society. And it is just, there have to be some roots in that for it to feel like it's, has anything to say, because otherwise it's just if it doesn't have anything to say, then we might as well have just designed a bunch of cool characters and then made a fighting game. Like, for it to be a story, you have to want to care about what happens next, which means it has to have some grounding in the world in which we live, and some relevance to the life we're all living.
And I guess that's also why you decided not to make one of the killer the hero of the story, that you chose also to focus on the civilian characters.
Yes.
Also, so that we as readers could maybe just relate also.
Yes.
Because, or maybe I could relate to the Foxmax killer, but that would be weird.
No, and I think there are certainly some of the killer characters that we add a little bit of depth to over the course of the story, but it's like, ultimately, it wasn't about humanizing them. Like, they are something not quite inhuman, but they're from a different set of rules than the world in which our ordinary characters live in. And we wanted to really tap into that.
But that's really interesting that because we're speaking of these very strong characters, the killers, and you're saying that Exquisite Corpse is like a TV series because there's a season 1 and a season 2.
Yeah.
And I wondered, wouldn't you do to do a spin-off also, because we do spin-offs in TV series about some of these very strong visual characters.
And that was very much part of the hope was that there would be enough interest in these characters that we would start developing those sorts of series. And I will say that we may, over the course of the next month or so, we might be announcing what happens after the conclusion of season 1. And I do think that spinning off into some of the killer characters and getting to tell different types of stories set in this universe is really, really exciting. So stay tuned.
But and speaking about the season 2, is it going to be season 2 like the same setup? Like it's still the same game with the 13 families?
Yes.
In a different era, or just after?
This will jump ahead to the next game. So
1 year later. Not 1 year later.
It's 5 years in the context of the game. So if the first game was essentially in 2025, this one would be in 2030, and it'll be released before 2030. But it is the next game will be the next game. And there are elements that will carry forward from the first game in ways that would, for me to spoil how they connect, would be spoiling the end of Exquisite Corpses season 1.
Okay, so I get that you didn't choose what would happen in the season 2 before just knowing the end of season 1.
Oh yeah. Like, because at first it was just the idea, like we focused all of our energy on making season 1 as good as it could be. And then it was over the course of before deciding on some of these spinoffs we may or may not be about to announce, okay. We wanted to see who were the characters that we were the most excited by to expand their mythology, and who were the images that we saw the readers and the creators working on this gravitate most to. And from there, we started building this larger framework.
So Tiny Onion is getting quite big at the moment in the industry. And we also know that Exquisite Corpses is going to be adapted into a movie, not a TV show. How did you step your feet in the whole film and TV industry? Because there are a lot of other projects that have been announced pretty recently.
Yeah. Part of building Tiny Onion was so I could have a more direct hand in shaping like how my material is adapted into other media. And being able to work, to build my own team, and, it gives us a lot more power in these conversations. Because oftentimes when, you give the rights to a company, you as a creator can get a little sidelined in that process. And then particularly if you're, like if you give your rights to a publisher and then you may not even be involved in the conversations about like who is the best to adapt this material and where it can go from here. Exquisite Corpses is something that, from the beginning we saw as having like real franchise potential. Like it's a big over the top, like it's a commercial book, like and its success in the comics market and in the US kind of helped prove that it's like, hey, like there's energy here. And that was really, really exciting to be able to start talking to producers about like, hey, how would we bring this energy to film, but also beyond just film. And the partner we're developing with the Exquisite Corpses with Lyrical Media is an investor in Tiny Onion. So there's a company that we have really close ties with. And then on top of that, it's a company that has they produce a lot of films. They're producers on on Death of Robin Hood coming out next year from A24. They're producers on the next Osgood Perkins film. And a bunch of other cool stuff. But then they also have an animation division, and they have a video game publisher division. So it's one of those things where it's like, this is the start of how can we bring this into, like, how do we really set up a whole universe of storytelling? And we wanted to start with the biggest, most tentpole version of it that we could create. And so that is why, like, figuring out the version that functions as a satisfying, like, blockbuster movie is that's the fun challenge of us building this next stage. And we'll see we'll see how that all goes. But simultaneous to all of that, we are talking about what would an animated approach to this be? What would a video game approach to this be? And it's very similar to how I'm building the Something Is Killing the Children franchise over with Blumhouse right now, where we're moving ahead on a live action feature film, but we're also simultaneously having conversations about we're developing an animated series in tandem with that will be complementary. But we're not just chasing one thing. We're chasing a whole wider universe of storytelling that we can play in. And not every story needs to be done in in every type of media, but there are some worlds that do feel like you could come at them from many different ways. And I do think Exquisite Corpses is a world like that. And I'm excited that, it seems like Hollywood agrees.
And it's really interesting that you acknowledge that Exquisite Corpses is a commercial book, because usually writers would say just now, I'm just writing comics for comics because comic book is the medium that's just it's enough by itself. But you are acknowledging that you can also write so-called commercial books in order to get stories to different medias, and that's not something that would be that you would be ashamed for
I think it's one of those things where, my mentor in comics was Scott Snyder.
Yeah.
And Scott Snyder and I have often talked about, it's like, we're very grateful that the stories that we most want to tell in the world exist in this, Stephen King is a massive influence on both of us. Steven Spielberg is a massive influence on both of us. And there is the kind of mass market commercial edge of it. But at the same time, we're neither of us see it as something where to go after the biggest version of a thing doesn't mean not going for the most personal version of a thing. One of my best-selling titles, so then therefore one of my most commercial titles is Nice House on the Lake, which is a wildly personal book for me. That is, both back in the US, that's still my most successful launch of a series ever. And it's, a big hit over here. But it's just that is, I don't know, you can do both. And I genuinely believe that you can do both. And you kind of have to, at a certain moment, take for granted that you can make it really, really good. And I'm, especially when I have an idea that feels like there's real energy to this idea. And then once I've partnered with the right creator to help bring that idea to life, then it's just like, okay, how do we make this the biggest, most successful version of it that it can be? And I have no shame in wanting to sell some comics, because that's how I'm gonna get to keep writing comics. And yeah, it's a fun part of the creative process.
And there also seems to be a lot of interest in the adult animated field, because we heard about the Wall Tree, and also a total original series that you're also developing. But we're also waiting for witches. You were speaking about Scott Snyder, so we have been waiting ages for an animated show of witches.
Animation can take a while, like, because the thing is like, I know, like they've the first writer's room for witches was a while back, but it's like, I've seen the finished animatics. Like, it is being like,
so it does exist.
It does exist. It will be coming out, and it's good. Like, I've seen some finished stuff that Scott has like shown me that on his phone, and it is like astonishingly good. So I'm hoping that, it's the thing that I've been hoping for, the Western comics market for years, is the fact that the pipeline that exists between manga and anime doesn't exist in the West, and it should, like,
especially for indie comics.
Yes, 100%. Like, and part of it is just like Western comics have always been so rooted in superheroes, in particular American comics, and it's just like, there are superhero cartoons and all of that, but just like the original, like the breadth of original ideas that exist in Western comics feel like they could create, many, many, many incredible animated series. And I'm excited to try my hand at making a few of them off of my own work. And animation is one of my deep passions, and sometimes I have to twist the arms of my agents in Hollywood, because there's less money in it as a creator. Live action stuff will always pay you more, and animation is slow, and it's complicated, and it's there are fewer buyers for it. So it's just like, the only people chasing adult animation are people who really, really care about it. And I am like happy to be like slowly teaming up with a lot of the people who care a lot about it, and we're going to try to make as much cool stuff as we can. And
it seems that maybe the success of Invincible might also help producers and studios to just get on on this topic.
Yeah, I am, once again, I feel like, it's riding on Robert Kirkman's coattails. He opened the door to long form serialized horror comics that then I feel like I was able to step into with Something's Killing the Children and everything else that I've done.
Yeah, because you committed to 100 issues for something.
Oh yeah. No, and it's like, I love a long form series. It's like, those are the stories that made me want to work in comics. And so it's like, I love serialized fiction. And I think that, this is, I like creating worlds that I can continue to live in and continue to explore, because I think that that's where some of the most magic, moments in the comics medium happen, in the strange alleyways you get to go down in a long form series that you can't in something more contained.
Okay, and last question. We also see the announcement of In Your Skin, which is a new comic book under the label Tiny Onion. So, and we were speaking about Robert Kirkman. So, is Tiny Onion going to be like a Skybound for itself?
So we function a little differently in that we're, there are a handful of books that are products of what we call our artist in residence program, which basically there are a bunch of artists that we work with on a bunch of our different titles that then we provide the resources that are available to my own work to those creators at basically for free. And so, Aditya Bidikar is a phenomenal writer. But he's the letterer of, Department of Truth, World Tree, like most of my titles, a lot of Ram V's titles, and he has such a brilliant mind, and he pitched this story, and it's just like, okay, like how can we help you make this story? And so we helped him, like, provide the editorial services, and like helped him set it up at Image and all of that. And then it's like the production side runs through Tiny Onion, but it's Aditya's book. Like Tiny Onion doesn't own a percentage of the intellectual property of that. That's similar to how the series Everything Dead and Dying worked with Tate Bromble and Jacob Phillips, and You'll Do Bad Things with Tyler Boss and Adriano Tertolucci, I believe. But it is that is how we've built it, and it's great to be able to provide the resources that I use to make my books look as polished and feel as like I need the team to make those books as good as they are. It's not a one man thing. Tiny Onion is now like a 15 person staff. So it's like being able to provide those resources to other creators is a really, really good feeling.
Okay, and really last question. So you've been writing several ongoing series in parallel for quite some years, but you finished the City Beneath Our Feet. So there's one spot free. Are you going to announce a new comic book this year?
Yes.
Okay. We'll be waiting for that. Thank you so much for your time, James.
Thank you.